Hello, my name is Mark Taviner, and good afternoon or good morning to any of our newfound American listeners, and welcome to our presentation on the changing landscape of digital behaviour.
Hi, I'm Emanuela Fouri, and hello from me too.
I'm Chief Strategy Officer, and I've been with Sports Alliance since foundation in 2002, a long time.
I have been with Sports Alliance since 2013 and I'm the data analyst.
So, we begin with a bird's eye view to look at digital lockdown during 2020.
Anthony has just talked about global themes in his introduction, the pyramid of sports, the near global domination of football or soccer, and why the USA is a little bit different. Yeah, I introduce a global fan segmentation that for the first time looks across all of your 40 million individual fan profiles and also integrates digital behavior.
I will then explore individual fan behaviour using fan timelines or journeys, in some cases many decades long. These timelines also allow us to explore the deeply social nature of sport through family and friendship stories. And in the final section, Digital Directions, we have a rallying cry for you and your digital partners to provide more digital behavioural data. So, part one, on digital lockdown, or what the hell just happened. The chart shows single sign-on logins per week. We begin with the blue line that shows logins for 2019. It shows normal in terms of overall platform growth as well as plenty of seasonality, starting in January through to May 2019 with between 300 and 500 logins a week, dropping down in the summer of 2019 before rising again for the rest of the 2019 season. We focus now on the orange line for 2020, in the top left. It begins normally at a higher level, between 500 and 750,000 logins per week until the second week of March, when we literally see the drop off a cliff in lockdown to rock bottom at 100,000 logins per week by the end of March. Closed doors, digital reopening rebounds with interest to 1 million logins per week at the end of June, our busiest week in the platform ever. After a delayed summer in July and August, logins are back up and above, but not perhaps at the level they should have been with organic growth predictions. This next slide shows emails sent per month. It has the same structure in terms of the blue line as 2019 and the orange line 2020 again. Let's focus on 2020 immediately, with the orange line starting at 25 million per month at the top left, 20% higher than the previous year's volumes. From here on, the orange line follows roughly the same pattern as single sign-on logins. We go down in March towards the bottom of April, but we dropped 50%, not the massive cliff drop that we saw previously. We then have a fallow period for a couple of months until June, when we clearly rebound for closed doors and then remain more or less at the same level from there on. This next slide, though, shows email open rates. It has the same colour structure, so blue for 2019 and orange for 2020, but we split the line. The top two lines show the open rates for season ticket holders, and the bottom two lines show the open rates for everybody else. We see the gap immediately between season ticket holders' open rates that would in the previous year be 40% or 20% higher than everybody else, as well as the slight seasonality. As before, 2020 began normally, but then in lockdown we see season ticket holder open rates rise from 40% to 50% and then continue at that level. Wouter and Matt in the following presentation will touch on this in some of the operational but also in the marketing going on behind this rise. Everybody else continues steadily. So, in summary, half empty or half full? In terms of half empty, I think no one can be really surprised on the short-term impact of COVID in lockdown March, April and May. Again, see Matt and Wouter in the following session. Half full, the loyalty of the sports fan transcended lockdown. In a sense, particularly for season ticket holders, we had a brief glimpse of an OTT future. In the next section, we now look at what is for us a significant analytical achievement, our very first global fan segmentation, including digital behaviour. Emanuela.
So, global fan segmentation. So what we've done is a clustering, which is basically the task of grouping a set of individuals in such a way that individuals in the same group are more similar. This is our first time global 40 million fans, including for the first time our Latin American fans, and includes a big chunk of data, of digital data, being 60 million SSO logins and more than 1 billion emails. So the next chart, we actually started this project in lockdown, March, so it's about 5 months of development. During development and testing, we realized that we wanted fewer cluster. The model worked best with 5, not 15, neither 15. The table shows a heat map visual of the distribution of the 5 clusters and the attributes throughout the clusters, which basically, as Mark says, it's 1 cluster per month throughout development. What the heat map shows is you've got your clusters along the columns, and on your left-hand side are the attributes that we used inside of the modeling. So we've got spend, demographics, attendance, season ticket holders, location, generation, and digital behavior. Digital we have split up to be email as passive digital and SSO as active digital. So let's go through each of the clusters. Cluster 1 is the biggest in size, which actually cluster 1 and cluster 2 represent 80% of the database. Mid-age, medium, international, and with email open rate. Cluster 2 are just millennials with a low spend. Cluster 3 are our digital females, not season ticket holders, but they do attend, so they have a high spend. And they are also very digital. Cluster 4 are higher spenders, attendance, and have a high active digital behavior. Meanwhile, Cluster 5 are our season ticket holders who attend, have the highest spend, and obviously are mainly more male, but are more passive digital. I'm going to focus on now 2 sets of attributes to show a little bit more in detail. Firstly, we will talk about digital females and then spend and age. So first focus is on digital females. The scatter plot shows clusters as bubbles with email open rate as the y-axis and SSO login rate as the x-axis in average for each of the clusters. Both metrics are digital, as we described before. Email open rate is passive and SSO we define as active. Here, each cluster is split into, again, 2 marks, the same color but different shapes. We represent female as a circle and males are squares for each of the clusters. So the first thing you can notice is that we've got 2 subsets. We've got clusters 1, 2, and 3 are closely grouped with a 25 to 35% open rate of emails, but with a very low SSO login rate. Cluster 3 are the females who have a slightly higher SSO logins and are driven by e-commerce. Then on the right, far right, top right, we've got clusters 4 and 5 are both much more digital, with 5 showing the highest email open rate, but still with high SSO. Meanwhile, cluster 4, highest SSO logins, while similar email open rate to the other clusters on the right, 1, 2, and 3. The difference in gender is most noticeable in cluster 4, where males, the squares, have a highest SSO of all. In cluster 5, there is a small difference the other way around, where females outperform males in both ways. Yeah. Now, the following chart shows spend versus age. Here we have taken a random subset of 1 million fans throughout the database. So each dot is an individual and it's colored by the cluster number. So as we can see, as we would expect, it's a normal distribution with a wire right tail on the right due to the sector of fans that we are looking at. This is an analytical version of our customer period with an age lifestyle. So cluster 1 is dark blue, is our largest cluster. It runs through all ages, but they have a low spend. Meanwhile, cluster 2 is the light blue and are only millennials, so go between 25 and 40 years old now. And some of them are higher spenders, making them more visible above the line of the dark blue. Cluster 4 in red and cluster 5 in orange are our high spenders and our season ticket holders, making the right tail wider. Cluster 3 in green is smaller and is more dispersed all over the chart. The plot also shows reality when it comes to clustering. Each cluster has its own representation of behavior, but shows also how individuals from different clusters can also be similar in attributes. This is exactly why we do the transformation from clustering to a fan event timeline. So, this is the first time that we've combined everybody from all clients into one single analytical model, and one that incorporates digital behavior for everyone. Whatever you think and whatever use this has, this is a big tick in the box. The segments that resulted are overwhelming, familiar. Nothing new under the sun. This is reassuring and certainly not a disappointment. Within these, we can see interesting ripples, the millennials in clusters 2, the digital females in cluster 4, and the differentiation between active SSO and passive emails. Clustering is not and never will be personal. We did not plan to give these clusters names in the idea that we would not use them necessarily for marketing or lookalikes, nor did we want to create 50 or more. We move more onto timelines for this as into being more personalized. Over to Mark.
So, thanks, Emma. On to timelines. So, what are timelines? Timelines are built from events. These are anything that your fans do with you that leaves an identifiable trace in time. We can visualize these events as timelines by using time as an axis. It's as simple as that. These timelines then let us tell stories. Here are 3 examples from 3 clubs, QPR, Wolves and Club Brugge. And a quick thank you to my colleague Kate for her work in the data modelling for this section. So, we begin with a long view timeline for one individual fan from QPR in West London. Let's start, as any story should, at the beginning. The top left, number 1, every mark or shape is an event, coloured by channel, here blue for physical and orange for digital, if you see the colour legend included. Here all events are circles, but sized according to spend. The columns are calendar years, so if we look from 1998 across to 2011, everything is blue for physical channel, apart from some life events, such as birthdays in red. I've highlighted the first event, blue circle, top left, the first season ticket, at 13 years old. Point number 2 moves on 6 years. Another blue circle, our fan is 19 years old, an adult now, and they travelled 200 miles to Sunderland for their first away game in the 2004-05 season. A long day out for anyone. Point number 3, this is the end of this particular fan's season ticket years in 2008-09, aged then 23. From here on, our fan in their mid and later 20s is still an active attender, but via membership and match tickets. So he's in cluster 4. Point number 4, in his late 20s, from 2012 to 2015, is the next phase, digital marketing, where targeted email opens and clicks and orange marks begin to appear. And point number 5, the fan's engagement really grows again in his early 30s. QPR were one of our first single sign-on clients in the summer of 2017. Happy memories. So from 2017 onwards, we get SSO login events, increasing e-commerce spread across club merchandise, and also from 2020, club pay transactions. That probably took us about 60 or 70 seconds, but we have literally seen a fan go up from a 13-year-old boy to a 35-year-old man. Let's hope there's many years yet. The next slide shows another long view, so lots of columns, but it's a different club. Here, Wolves, or Wolverhampton Wanderers, starting from the year 2003 based on the data available. The approach I've taken here is different. We're using shared attributes, address and surname, date of birth, and we're looking at 4 individual timelines together, starting with dad and then mum in the top 2 rows, and then the 2 sons below. I've continued here to annotate the slide with numbered example timeline events. I hope you can see this, but I'll talk it through as the devil or the joy is definitely in the detail. Just to make things even more fun, I've included another detail as the event type, which is indicated by the shape, which some of you might have, if you're watching on a laptop or even a mobile phone, you'll have difficulty seeing, I can assure you. So, top left at point number 1, dad and mum are both turning 30 at the start, and some number 1 is not yet a year old. They continue to attend, but not every game, and mum less than dad, And presumably the kids are toddlers, as son number 2 is born in 2004. Point number 2, mum is basically booking a birthday party on the 5th of February 2008 for her eldest son's birthday in the following week on the 12th of February. Happy returns. Point number 3, the first match attended together as a family is Nottingham Forest, who get thrashed 5-1 at home in what is apparently a famous night for Wolves. I looked that up on the internet. Point number 4, in 2010, it's the turn of son number 2 to celebrate his 6th birthday at Molyneux. It's a pattern here. And also he joins his elder brother on a half-term soccer school later that month. Point number 5, top right. From 2011 to 2016, all family members share a similar pattern, gathering speed in 2012 and 2013 to peak in 2014. This was Wolves and the Deer in double relegation in 2012 and 2013. This family are with it through thick and thin. Mum and Dad are both in the highest cluster, cluster number 5. But Mum is clearly the digital leader with many more orange digital events, including e-commerce. Finally, bottom right, 2019, both sons are now digital independent with the introduction of the mobile app as well as the other digital strategy headings. And both sons are in cluster 3. So we have one more life timeline story to tell. Partial capacity, ironically, gives us another opportunity to identify and then look at fan timelines together as friendship groups. Wouter and Matt will address this in their session next. For my part, I've been working with my colleague Michael Hulman from our Dutch office in partial capacity for allocation of season ticket holders using rules for rotation of entitlement access. For Club Brugge in this case, fans were required to identify themselves as bubbles. So here we use the bubble ID presented this year for the 4 fans as the basis of the grouping. The story takes a more schematic approach to try and show areas of similarity and dissimilarity that define the initial groups as time passes before they merge at the end. So in point number 1, our top 2 fans lived at the beginning of the story over a decade ago in Lissavega, a small town near Blankenberge near Brugge. Michael tells me this is the Benidorm of Belgium. I responded to explain that the Benidorm of England is Benidorm. They both started together as season ticket holders in the South Stand. We can see that their timelines are very similar from 2009 to 2012, but in point number 2, they diverge. Friend number 2 goes away for 3 years between the ages of 18 and 21, most probably for university. And in point number 3, we see that back again, together, sitting together, and a shared pattern. On the bottom left, we introduced 2 twins, sharing surname and date of birth, a sister at the bottom and a brother. I'm a twin too. The boy twins timeline gathers momentum first though, in point number 5, with regular attendance between 2011 and 2013. In point number 6, we see a shared pattern as the twin sister's attendance and digital begins to match that of her twin brother. Finally, in point number 7, all 4 timelines converge in 2019, where they share season ticket they share season ticket seats in the North Stand in 2019 in the same block. We also see the introduction of digital, the orange dots for email, single sign-on, push messaging, and e-commerce, which is testimony, I think, to the club's digital-first strategy. So, in summary, a lifetime of belonging. I think the long views represented by both these individual and shared timeline journeys should be extremely reassuring to you at this particular time. Your fans are with you now, and they always have been, and we think they always will be. The season is a fundamental building block of these lifetime relationships. All the thinking and products that inevitably revolve around the season are not necessarily broken. We can also see that sport is social through friendship and family groups. Understanding, acknowledging, and then using these relationships is a next big step on the right for what we intend our digital analytical futures to be. I'm now going to spend the last few minutes talking about digital directions. The purpose of this is very simple. We want more digital session tracking data from your digital partners. The diagram shows where we position ourselves, literally in the middle between digital and everywhere else. We, Sports Alliance, don't do digital in terms of design, content management systems, or tracking advertising. We help digital personalize and target via single sign-on and then our own API for additional personalization data. Digital in sport is extremely fragmented. There's no dominant single or even a handful of providers as there is in ticketing. The global enterprise software houses such as Adobe come to market with a full suite offering across user experience, content management, data management, and customer data platforms, but will expect no less than $1 million or more per implementation plus services. Predictably, we have seen very little of them. In the UK, we work with 20 or more separate digital providers. Outside of the UK, we have another 10 or a dozen more. There are no particular standards, but how we work or how we want to work with these companies is actually very simple. There they are. First, identity, single sign-on. We've covered that enough. Fan profile is basically where the digital provider comes to our API to use data, fan profile data for personalization. Marketing is essentially integrating identity so that we can personalize marketing, push messaging, advertising within the digital application. And then finally here, tracking, where any fan individual behavior within the application can be sent back to us. This is what a timeline looks like when we have tracking data. We've taken a fan on the top left who's not in any of the highest clusters. They're cluster 3. First year is very quiet, occasional match ticket or an occasional merchandise purchase. But what we're definitely not looking at is a super fan in action. From 2014 onwards, the relationship is majority digital and via email. Steady, but by no means spectacular. Point number 3, we have our first SSO login in 2018, which in this case was the calm before the storm. Point number 4, the introduction here for Wolves of the Intercam mobile app and tracking data, session tracking data, completely transforms the event timeline. From perhaps 10 events per year to this fan for many, many thousands. From now on, we have every session, including content areas, as well as targeted push messages. The time this represents for the van is now significant. The session duration, when summed up, could be 5, 10, 15 hours a month in busiest month. Session duration, as well as frequency, is now a critical KPI or metric. So, in summary, digital lockdown, unexpected, unwelcome, but yet also a sign of things to come. I'll let Wouter and Matt continue.
We expect you to recognize 90% of what we discussed on our global fan segmentation behavior represented here is long-standing and now global.
Fan timelines made things personal and yet also shared. Our next challenge is to build these into your daily bread and butter analytics for everything that you do. And finally, for digital directions, now is the time to really start thinking about duration or time, as well as spend or loyalty. We want more orange dots, please. Okay, thanks.
Thank
Over
you.
to questions.
Bye.
Yes, here we are. Thank you very much for that, Mark and Emanuela. We have a few questions which we wanted to put to you, please. The one question was fan timelines. Can clients have these to look at themselves and to engage with? Could you comment on that, please?
The idea of the fan timelines is absolutely there. But for me, the whole drive to visualize the individual fan as if it were a CRM view, but with time as the narrative. And then that also allows us to display more than one fan at a time, which anybody that's used a CRM tool will know is very difficult in terms of the groups. The underlying data model that was developed, as I said, primarily by my colleague Kate and Lee, is something that, with a few extra tweaks, will allow clients to access individual fan timelines via a Tableau report.
Interesting. Thanks very much. And then the second question refers to the global fan segmentation, which is described as very interesting. But if you could just give a few more examples of exactly what it could be used for.
Well, the global segmentation cannot be applied on a club level. We would have to run it specifically on a club level to then create fan personas, as we know, and then give a description of each one of them. So yeah, we can, what we've done for the whole of Sports Alliance, we can do on a club level.